Right in the beginning, Ed shows another side of his life. He goes to the school even though it is a holiday to teach a special student named Danny. He was considered special due to the fact that his parents were influenced on the school and friends with the head principal. As always, his mother interrupts him and calls asking if he could watch her cat while she traveled with her boyfriend, and he, strongly disliking the idea, accepts. Going back to the Danny case, it is mentioned that he is special because he doesn't fit in this education system pattern.
Ed's mom was first presented as a woman that did everything possible for her family and her job, following what she believes. The time passed and all she got was stress and more headache. Now, with her husband dead, she got married once more. Gary, her new husband, is really changing her. Now she does exercise, eat better, and the most important, she's enjoying life. One person can change the other. That's what's called the power of humanity, or the power of love.
Eddie then talked about the educational system, as he pointed out as being a one-size-fits-all kind of education, which I don't think it's ideal if you want to reach everyone, because different people react to different types of teaching styles, such as just listening or mixing it up to a visual or practical teaching.
So, in terms of education, when we talk about providing different types of stimulus, like a movie, a TV series episode, or even a song, in the construction of knowledge, we must discuss how pupils are being educated nowadays. Since I'm studying pedagogy in college, I've been in many internships from the kindergarten up to high school. And I must say that education is still very traditional, mainly in elementary school and after. This means that the education system still sees the teacher as the only source of information in a classroom. As decades ago, students still must learn the way that they are being taught. That is, the way that the teacher wants. Using the theory of one of the most important educators, Paulo Freire, he believed that traditional education consists in a banking model of education. In this case, the teacher deposits the information on the student like a container, regardless of whether the student will learn. And later, this information are going to be extracted in the moment of the exam, for example. In this case, we can really say that the student acquire real knowledge. Some pupils will learn by the way they are being taught. What about the ones that couldn't learn? With that seen, I agree that we must use different types of engagements so we can approach the constructivism, where the idea is the student as the active subject in their own knowledge construction process. The teacher's role is just to facilitate this process, taking into account the specificities of each student in the way knowledge is internalized by them.
Because of the current situation of the pandemic, a huge amount of students is having online classes to avoid the spread of the virus. However, the pupils have been complaining about this new educational system lately, since the class turns out to be boring due to the lack of interaction between the students and the teacher, something that used to be normal during regular classes. Therefore, teachers must find ways to entertain the pupils. Some examples can be by songs that explain the subject or by games which challenge the students to find out more about class topics.
Not only the schools, but also colleges and universities had to adopt their systems. For the ones which already had distance education, it was easier as they could kind of transfer the students to it. Through my own experience, I can say that they worked hard to keep the same quality of teaching, but we have to consider that some subjects are really hard to teach online, mainly the ones which involves numbers as cost accounting and pricing. The learning process is not the same as when we are in classes.
Because the education does not fit all, Eddie tutors Danny with a famous book called Lord of the Flies. The book shows some kids that are alone in an island with no adults. They find a way to survive by getting together. However, when the ideas of how the society would work are mentioned by the main characters, the civilization falls apart, showing their most savage sides. The book shows how society must have a strong control, or else savagery would be in part of the society. But what is interesting in the passage in the chapter is the fact that it may connect to what happened in 1986, since when Danny expresses his ideas about how we pretend to be actually in control and still are savager inside, uh, and still are by nature, Eddie feels annoyed and impacted by them.
Once the intervention with Danny is over, Eddie goes for a walk. As he passes by a park, he spots a teenager sitting on the swings quite sadly, and that image brings back an old memory of his. Nikki, sitting in the same spot, stabbing her own leg with her little crucifix and an expressionless face.
When Nikki is hurting herself with the crucifix without showing emotion, I believe it shows how much she's hurt at home due to her father's abusive treatment. She probably does this to distract herself from her daily physical and emotional pain. It must be so much that the cross on her thighs doesn't really affect her. Reverend Martin is controlling, so she doesn't have many opportunities to stay away from him. Pain must be something present in her life.
After having this disturbing flashback, Eddie gets a call from Chloe. Apparently, Mikey left his wallet at their place last night, and the keys of his hotel room inside it. Eddie starts getting worried, and decides to ask for him there. Unfortunately, he didn't get good news. Mikey did not return to the hotel that night.
After Chloe found Mickey's wallet, which had his hotel room key in it, Eddie started to speculate about how could Mickey enter the hotel room without his key. So he went to the hotel and talked to the receptionist, who looked annoyed and was not trying to cooperate, but ended up finding out Mickey was not in his room. So that leaves Eddie with questions such as where could he be and what could he be doing, even though he was not with his own wallet. And we think to ourselves, what could Eddie possibly do to find his friend, since he did not manage to answer his phone?
The hotel scene takes place in 2016, when the main character Eddie goes to the Travelodge building where Mickey Cooper was hosted to look for his mate who has disappeared. It succeeds at service from the parts of the receptionist as dudes, how the worker is called, seem not to be caring about what happens aside his work of receptioning. Mickey's disappearance occurred outside of his job time, and he is reluctant to do any effort to help. This scene being retracted caused certain frustration as it shows how people are used not to do their job properly. Disappointment, life perspective, career growth, tons of facts can result in the infacility at work. Did dude not see himself growing in his career? Did he don't care about losing his job? Was he suffering some psychological issues? Well, one thing is certain. The impression he left to Eddie, who in the future could be possibly a guest, caused a negative impact to the business itself.
Sean died in what was called an accident, since it was Ed's first funeral, which he was obliged by his mother to go. He had stereotypized a raining day with everybody wearing black, just as the films. However, for its surprise, Sean's family asked everyone to come in blue and red, the school football team colors. Reason why this was his favorite colors. Probably had the goal to make the moment smoother. Also, to contradict his speculation, it was a sunny day. In the way to the church, Ed saw his friend Hobo reunited with all his family. Even the sick dog, bringing a pet to such a sad meeting might be poorly interpreted. Nevertheless, They greeted Hopo's family and continued their path to the church.
When the funeral begins, each person in the ceremony could see that Metal Mickey was walking beside his brother's coffin. However, he didn't seem to be actually there. He was off, almost like a robot. Suddenly, Mickey started running away from the funeral, heading out of church. Everyone could notice his escape, except his parents, who were still in great shock, maybe because Sean was their favorite child. Afterwards, Reverend Martin started to do his speech, saying that heaven received another angel, but straight away P.C. Thomas and his daughter Hannah, also known as the blonde girl, appeared with a loudy entrance. As soon as they arrive, the policeman accuses Sean of raping Hannah and reveals that she's carrying his baby. Everybody gets surprised, and Sean's dad starts arguing with Thomas. During the fight, P.C. Thomas threw the coffin on the floor, resulting in a massive shouting, transforming a distressful funeral day into a horror film scenario.
Just to remind the readers, there is a moment that Eddie is at home and he sees his mom on the sofa with some blonde girl. She is crying and mom is hugging her. A few moments later, he realizes that this lady is Hannah, PC Thomas' daughter. He wonders what could be happening to her and if she is in a kind of trouble. This scene only makes sense after the funerals episode, when her father says that the girl was raped and is pregnant. Perhaps she had been there to have an appointment with the boy's mom, because she already knew about her pregnancy and was thinking about abortion. What a word, isn't it? She was protesting against and now she's looking for it. I believe her father just knew about her baby after she went to Ed's house, and I also think that he wouldn't allow his daughter to do this abortion thing.
Being dug 7 feet under the ground meant more to Ed than a ritual. Only when his son was buried did he truly start to understand death in its purest and coldest form. Knowing this, he felt bad, not because his friend's brother passed away, but because he almost didn't even feel sad about it. Sean was never a good kid, and just like Ed knew it, Mr. Halloran also did. However, did he deserve such ending? After the ceremony, Hopo's dog disappears, found a couple hours later, bleeding at the park. It also dies. What's more interesting about it is that as Ed left the church to help his friend find it, he noticed a white chalk drawing with the figure of a dog.
But what does Mr. Halloran mean when he said that he doesn't think Sean raped the girl? That she's not his type?
Mr. Halloran believes Sean did not rape the girl because he tried to abuse Eddie. Thus, the teacher figures Sean might not be into girls. I do not agree. Sean is a bad person who doesn't care about the other's feelings and is capable of doing anything for his own pleasure.